Previously, at Evergreen Village. James Miller, once a soldier, broke the morning silence with a single name, Eleanor. Rosa carried flowers, her smile trembling with unspoken guilt. Arthur's piano awakened memories too heavy to bear. And Maggie's blue diary, long kept closed, was finally opened by Lily. Inside, a letter revealed a name whispered from the past, Derik. Now, as shadows deepen, Evergreen's secrets can no longer remain buried. The kindness in her voice unraveled Maggie's defenses. Her eyes glistened. Some stories, she whispered, are too heavy for the present. And once they're opened, they never go back to sleep. Lily's expression softened, but curiosity glowed stronger in her eyes. After the call ended, the room felt emptier, and the diary heavier. It pulsed on the table like a second heartbeat. After midnight, Evergreen held its own symphony of silence. The old wood creaked, the wind slipped through the pines, and somewhere a cart left in the hallway sighed against the floor. Rosa moved through the shadows, her steps careful, her breath shallow, as if she feared waking ghosts, or something darker within herself. She entered Maggie's room quietly, without turning on the light. Moonlight draped across the floor in silver ribbons. On the bedside table, the diary waited. Thomas's framed photo sat nearby, solemn, as though watching her trespass. The tick of the clock grew louder, accusing, counting. Rosa approached. Her hand reached out, her fingers brushing the worn leather cover. The touch burned. She closed her eyes, her breath ragged, as though memory itself clawed at her. For a moment she almost opened it. But fear won. She pulled back, trembling, tears caught in her lashes. Not yet, she whispered. She left the room as silently as she had come. The diary remained still, untouched. And yet, it seemed to hum with waiting, as though it were smiling in the dark. Morning arrived bright, the sky painted with false calm. Maggie had left early for a garden activity, her room neat and ordered. But the blue diary sat openly on the table, impossible to ignore, like a heart beating outside of a body. That was when Lily came by. Her youth carried her easily into the room, her eyes immediately drawn to the book. She moved closer, her fingers brushing the cover, curiosity as natural to her as breath. Without fear, she opened it. The smell of aged paper rose, filling the air with whispers of years long gone but not forgotten. She turned the pages slowly, reading pieces of her grandmother's past. Then her fingers found a folded section, thicker than the rest. A hidden envelope slipped free, landing on the wooden floor with a soft, deliberate sound. Lily knelt and picked it up. The envelope was worn, its edges softened by time. She opened it quickly, not knowing the weight it carried. Inside was a letter written in elegant cursive, the ink still vivid, as though it had been written yesterday. She read the opening words, "To the one I could never forget." Her breath caught. She read faster, her heart pounding, until her eyes reached the last line. A name surfaced from the page like a whisper rising from the grave. Derik. The impact was instant. Lily's chest tightened. She looked around the room, half expecting her grandmother to appear and explain, to turn secrets into clarity. But she was alone. The quiet had changed. It no longer felt gentle. It was heavy, crowded with questions. Who was Derik? What had he meant to her grandmother? And why had this been hidden so long? Lily pressed the letter to her chest, as though holding it might anchor her. The air itself seemed charged. Outside, the wind stirred the pines, their branches swaying as though whispering in unison. Some secrets do not stay buried forever. The days that followed in Evergreen Village carried a strange tension, a current beneath the calm. Lily could not shake the name written at the end of the letter, Derik. It echoed in her mind like a riddle. Each time she looked at her grandmother, she saw not just the gentle woman who raised her, but someone holding entire lifetimes of silence. She wanted to ask again, to demand answers, but Maggie's eyes, tired and distant, warned her away. In the garden, Rosa clipped roses with careful hands. Maggie joined her, sitting quietly on the bench. The air was rich with the smell of freshly watered soil, the hum of bees moving from bloom to bloom. Rosa handed Maggie a single rose, its petals the color of fading sunsets. Neither spoke for a long while. Finally, Rosa broke the quiet. You look troubled. Maggie's eyes fell to her hands. Lily found something. Rosa froze. The shears in her hand trembled. What kind of something? Her voice carried a sharpness she tried to soften, but the fear beneath it was undeniable. A letter. Maggie's tone was low, reluctant. It mentioned a name. Derik. Rosa inhaled sharply. Her eyes darted to Maggie's, searching, pleading. You shouldn't. She stopped herself, shaking her head. Some names belong to the past. They don't survive well in the light of the present. Maggie studied her friend. You know something. Rosa looked away, her silence loud enough to answer. The rose in her hand drooped, a single petal falling to the ground. That evening in the dining hall, the air was thick with voices and clinking cutlery. Edward entertained the table again with stories, this time about a cathedral he had once sketched from memory. His hands moved like wings as he spoke, his words painting arches and towers in the minds of those listening. But Maggie sat still, her spoon untouched, her thoughts tangled with Derik's name. She watched James from across the room. He ate little, his gaze drifting into places no one else could follow. Rosa sat beside him, her posture upright, her smile faint but unconvincing. Maggie noticed the way Rosa's hand rested on the table, tense, as though holding back words that wanted to break free. After dinner, Maggie walked slowly back to her room. The hallway was hushed, the lamps casting long shadows. The blue diary waited on her table, silent but powerful. She sat before it, her fingers resting lightly on the cover. Her heart told her to leave it closed. Her mind begged her to open it, to finish what Lily had begun. But before she could decide, a soft knock came at the door. Rosa entered, her expression pale and urgent. She closed the door behind her and stood for a moment, gathering herself. I saw Lily earlier, Rosa began, her voice low. She looked shaken. Did she read the letter? Maggie nodded. Rosa pressed her hand against her chest as though steadying a storm. Maggie, listen to me. That name, Derik, it doesn't belong here anymore. It's a wound that should have been buried with time. Maggie's eyes hardened. Then why does it haunt you too? Rosa's composure faltered. Tears threatened, though she blinked them away. Because I knew him. Because I was there. The words fell heavy between them. Maggie's heart lurched. What are you saying? But Rosa did not answer fully. Instead, she lowered herself into the chair across from Maggie, her shoulders sagging under decades of unspoken truths. Some stories, Maggie, are not ours alone. Some bind us together whether we want them to or not. The following morning, Edward found Maggie sitting by the gazebo, her face pale with sleeplessness. He adjusted his glasses, studying her with quiet patience. You've uncovered something, he said simply. Maggie looked at him, her lips pressed tight. Do you know the name Derik? Edward flinched almost imperceptibly, but it was enough. He looked away, sighing. Names carry weight, and some weights aren't meant for one person to bear. Edward, Maggie pressed. Who was he? Edward set his notebook aside, his hands folding neatly in his lap. His eyes were heavy, full of years. He was a choice, he said at last. A choice that shaped more than one life. That's all I can tell you. Maggie's pulse quickened. Every answer only deepened the mystery. She realized the truth was not James's alone, nor Rosa's, nor hers. Derik was a shadow cast across all of them. That night, James wandered again. Maggie found him in the hallway, staring at the flagpole visible through the glass doors, his lips whispering the name Eleanor like a prayer. She approached slowly, her heart caught between pity and fear. James, she said gently. Who was Eleanor? His eyes flicked to hers, lucid for a fleeting second. Eleanor was light, he whispered. But Derik was the shadow. Before Maggie could ask more, his gaze clouded, the clarity gone. Rosa appeared behind her, quickly taking James's arm. He needs rest, she said, too quickly, too firmly. She led him away before Maggie could speak. Alone in the hallway, Maggie's hands shook. The puzzle had grown larger, its pieces scattered among the memories of everyone around her. And at its center, always, was the diary, waiting for her to find the courage to let the past speak fully at last. The storm of secrets that hovered over Evergreen grew heavier with each passing day. Maggie felt it pressing on her chest, as though the very air in the village thickened with names unspoken. And at the center of it all, the diary waited, whispering in silence. One evening, Maggie sat again in the music room. Arthur played softly, his notes weaving around the silence that had settled on her shoulders. When the final chord faded, Arthur turned to her with gentle eyes. "You carry a weight, Maggie," he said quietly. "But remember, music teaches us that even broken chords can resolve." Later that night, Lily returned to Maggie's room. Her face glowed with the fierce light of youth, but her hands trembled as she held the letter again. "Grandma," she said, her voice unsteady. "You have to tell me. Who was Derik?" Maggie's heart twisted. Tears welled in her eyes. "It's not only my story to tell." Before Maggie could answer, a knock came at the door. Rosa entered, her expression grim. Behind her, Edward followed, leaning heavier than usual on his cane. The room, suddenly filled with them all, felt smaller, tighter. The diary lay on the table, silent yet commanding. Edward spoke first. "It's time." Rosa's hands clenched together. If she read the letter, she deserves to know. Maggie nodded slowly. "Then tell her." Rosa lowered herself into the chair across from Lily. "Derik was a man we all knew. A man who loved fiercely, but whose love cut paths through all our lives. He was a soldier, like James. He fought beside him. And when the war ended, not all battles were laid to rest." Edward's voice was rough. "Derik was the reason some of us found each other. And he was the reason some of us lost everything." Maggie closed her eyes. "He was the man I once loved. Before Thomas, before this life I built. Derik was the secret I kept locked away. But silence doesn't bury, it preserves." James's voice came from the doorway, startling them all. His eyes were unexpectedly clear. "Because Eleanor loved him too," he said. His voice trembled. "We both did, and I never forgave myself." The room froze. The past had entered fully, uninvited but undeniable. Lily's breath caught. Maggie's tears spilled freely. Rosa covered her mouth, unable to contain the sob that rose in her chest. Edward's voice broke the silence. "Derik was not just a man. He was the thread that bound us together, and tore us apart." One by one, the confessions came: Rosa, Edward, James, each carrying guilt, silence, or broken promises. The grief was heavy, but for the first time, the silence felt lighter. Maggie took Lily's hand. "Some secrets aren't meant to protect the past," she whispered. "They're meant to test the present." Lily's eyes shone. "Then maybe it's not about hiding anymore, but remembering, together." The next day, the village gathered in the garden. Arthur played. James raised his hand in salute. Rosa laid flowers as offering. Edward sketched, steady at last. And Maggie, with the diary open, read aloud, not only Derik's words, but her own. Because now the silence was broken. And Evergreen became more than a refuge. It became a sanctuary of truth, where even the heaviest secrets could finally be carried together. The days after the revelations in Maggie's room carried a different weight. Evergreen was quieter, but it was not the silence of secrets. It was the calm after a storm. For the first time since her arrival, Maggie felt the village breathe as one. James still called for Eleanor, but now his grief was held gently, no longer feared. Rosa offered flowers not as apology, but as gifts. Edward's sketches mirrored renewal, his lines weaving people together. Arthur's music carried more hope than sorrow. And Maggie, she no longer dreaded the blue diary. Its secrets had been spoken. It no longer bound her, but set her free. Walking with Lily in the garden, Maggie understood the gift of truth. "We all carry more than we show," she told her granddaughter. "But that's why we walk together, so the weight doesn't belong to just one." And as they sat near the gazebo, Evergreen seemed to hum with quiet life, no longer fractured by secrets, but bound by the truths they had faced together. The music room stood like a sanctuary, sunlight slanting through tall windows as Arthur coaxed gentle notes from the piano. James joined him, hesitant but willing, his hands trembling as though retracing forgotten roads. For a brief moment, a melody emerged, fragile but alive. Then it faltered. His eyes clouded, his chest tightened, and he whispered a single name: Eleanor. The air grew heavy, the silence louder than any song. James sat suspended between two worlds, a present slipping away, and a past that clung like shadow. And Maggie understood, this was Evergreen's truth, not only for James, but for them all. That night, the dining hall glowed with laughter and the scent of warm bread. Rosa introduced Maggie with kindness, and Edward's gentle wit filled the table with smiles. But James sat apart, his spoon suspended, his gaze fixed on a world no one else could see. And Maggie realized Evergreen carried two kinds of silence, one that comforted, and another that revealed wounds no one could mend. The next afternoon, Maggie found Edward sketching in the garden. "A house is like a memory," he said. "Even stone crumbles if left untended." When she asked about broken memories, his reply was soft. "Homes don't need to be perfect to shelter love. And neither do memories." For the first time, Maggie felt the weight on her chest loosen. That night, Evergreen's halls echoed with the slow tick of clocks. James wandered alone, searching for ghosts in the glass. Rosa found him, his hand trembling in hers. "This hallway won't take you where you want to go," she whispered, guiding him back. In that silence, his hand sought safety, and hers, at last, sought forgiveness. The music room glowed with afternoon light as Arthur played, his notes weaving with Maggie's voice reading softly from her book. For a moment, Evergreen felt suspended between silence and song. But then, James stood, his chair crashing to the floor, his voice torn with despair. "Eleanor." The room froze. Arthur's music died into silence. Rosa rushed to hold him, her eyes betraying a fear Maggie had never seen before. In that moment, she understood, James was not the only one haunted here. That night, Maggie sat before the blue diary, her heart heavy with what it held. Rosa crept into the room after midnight, her hand trembling on the cover, but fear pulled her back. And in the morning, it was Lily who opened it. The letter slipped free, its words alive as if just written. "To the one I could never forget." Derik. The name struck her like a blow. The quiet of Evergreen changed that day, it no longer felt gentle, but crowded with questions. In the days that followed, Lily carried Derik's name like a riddle, while Maggie carried the silence of her past. In the garden, Rosa clipped roses with careful hands and offered one to Maggie. At last, Maggie whispered, "Lily found something. A letter. It mentioned Derik." Rosa froze, fear in her eyes. "Some names," she said, "belong to the past. They don't survive in the light of the present." And Maggie knew then, Rosa carried her own truth about the man named Derik. At Evergreen, the hallways carried more than footsteps. They carried memories, broken promises, and love that time could never erase. But in the end, silence gave way to truth. And truth, though heavy, became lighter when shared. Perhaps that is Evergreen's greatest lesson. No one should carry the weight of the past alone. Because when we walk together, even the heaviest burdens can become light.